Hey there, I am back with another deck review, and today we're going to be looking at the Standards Flag Edition playing cards from Art of Play. Now, this is the fourth deck in the Standard series, the long-awaited fourth deck. Last year they released the first three decks all at the same time. There's the red, black, and gold versions of the deck, but they promised there would be 6 different versions of the deck. So here we are about a year later, and or over a year later, and we finally have deck number 4 with the Flag Edition. So let's find out what the deck's all about and take a look at it. Now, first off, the name Standards. Standards refers to the gold standard, and specifically the gold standard in England, which is the story of which is what inspired this design overall. The gold standard is just basically this idea that all money that a country produces should be backed by a physical amount of gold somewhere. It's an economic idea that was popularized by a lot of different economists, and very notably in England, a gentleman by the name of David Ricardo. And so you'll see him make an appearance in this deck. Now, the gold standard is no longer in use today, but it remains a really important part of economic history. And so that's the inspiration behind the deck. We'll start out with the tuck case. And you'll see right away why this is called the Flag Edition. The cardboard itself is white, but it's printed over with this Union Jack image over the top. So the red and black in place of blue, but you got the red, black, and white kind of forming the image of a portion of the flag of the United Kingdom there. And it's completely covered with multiple colors of foil. You have both red and black foil making up a really almost chaotic looking design across the back. You have the center, very nice, easy to read in gold, it says Standards across the middle. And then you have what is ultimately the back design of the cards, but you can see it reflected in the back. It's a little bit hard to read just with the multiple colors, which means it really just kind of produces a cool ephemera sort of look to it. Very, interesting, random, but if you zoom in, you'll be able to see all the different details from the banner work with God Save the Gold, God Save the King. You've got the kind of coat of arms look there at the top and the bottom as well. So lots of different details, really reflecting the opulence of Great Britain all throughout. Beautiful flower work, leaves, and just flourishes everywhere you look against that really cool Union Jack back. Turning to the sides, on one side you've got an all red with foil accents, premium playing cards. On the other, big fancy Standards written bold across there. The bottom has your ad copy, and even that's really fancily done in foil. It's made with Kevin Cantrell Studio, who designed the deck. So Kevin Cantrell, you may recognize his work from some really popular Theory 11 decks, including one of his recent ones in the Tavern on the Green deck. So it does really beautiful work. Love his work as a designer. And of course, Art of Play mentioned on the other side. The top just has Standards and is covered up by that tuck seal. And the back here, no more kind of chaotic gold foil all throughout, but instead you have a similar design to what was on the red and the black decks. You have this big, bold spade pip that's made up of a lion with its mane just sort of flaring around. Really cool look. A little bit hard to make out depending on how you hold it, but if you hit it in the light right, you can see that amazing image of the lion there. It has the gold standard printed at the top with a few medallions, and then a couple significant years in the gold standard written in Roman numerals. On one side, you've got 1819, basically when the gold standard started in Britain, and then over here, 1971, which marks sort of the end worldwide of the gold standard finally. You do get a really nice die-cut red and gold seal here as well as Standards with the sword on it, really beautifully done in that bright gold foil. Opening up the inner flaps, of course the design continues over here. You've got our anointed defender, our faithful sovereign, and then more details on the inner flaps here, and printing all the way down the interior of the tuck. You see the word Standards there, and that gold printing on the white Cardboard just goes all the way down to really beautifully done. Really nicely done. I love this tuck case. I think if I have one knock, it's that the Union Jack, I think you get a really stark difference between the almost crazy feel of all the foil on this side to this side almost looking a little bit flat without the foil details. I think it's a little bit jarring to me to kind of turn the deck over and see how flat that looks. All of that said, though, I absolutely love this tuck. I think that's a small knock against an otherwise fantastic tuck case. So there's the tuck case. Well, let's get into the cards, and we'll start with the back design. And the back design again features the flag of Great Britain, that red, and then of course here where you would normally see blue, you've got black, and printed over the top is a gold metallic ink back design featuring all sorts of tiny details. Now, much like the tuck case, you can zoom in and you can look at all the different details from the banners and the crests and see all sorts of little elements all throughout here that are kind of nods to the story of Great Britain. But it's also really, really hard to make out some of those details here. So it almost becomes like a random bit of gold ink on the back as opposed to a kind of cohesive design. Not something I mind at all. I think it looks beautiful. It's just one that kind of makes it a little bit harder to get into the specific details of the design. You do have that large bar down the center made up of two swords kind of pointing into the middle and forming just a really beautiful, vibrant two-way back design. Finishes out with a thin white poker border around the edge to make a really beautiful back design. Now it is the same back design, just with a different background coloring that you'll find on the red and the black. In this case, they've done the red, black, and white to form that flag design. So there's the back design. You do also get a pair of identical jokers on here, identical except for the black and the red joker in the corner. And it features a portrait or a profile in the center of David Ricardo. I mentioned David Ricardo as the famed British economist whose theories in part helped to inspire the gold standard. And so you can see him commemorated there in the center. And then an explosion of gold metallic ink with leaf work, vine work, all the way through, forming a really ornate design all the way through. You have the scales balanced at the top, standards written across the bottom to finish out really striking design. So there's your two jokers. You also get some extra cards. They are both ad cards. The first one is this one right here for Kevin Cantrell and Art of Play. Also really beautifully designed, great study of typography going throughout this one. Really like the design that went into that one. And then the other one is actually for a book that Kevin Cantrell is working on. He's working on a book called The Gold Standard of Lettering and Branding. And so you can see here a little bit of an ad for that upcoming book. So there are your two ad cards. Getting into the rest of the deck, start with the Ace of Spades. If you've seen the other standards decks, you've seen this design, and it is one of my favorite Ace of Spades designs out there. You have that gold lion from the tuck case making an appearance again. This time though, with some of the black elements which help that design really pop out with a lot more contrast. You can see the beautiful line work that went into that. Has the gold standard written at the top. Cantrell a priori, basically made by Kevin Cantrell, written at the top. And then a nice, fairly standard spade pip and custom font on the index in the corner, done in gold metallic ink. Really just striking Ace of Spades. And that's not the only ace that's done up well. All four of the aces are actually really big, bold pips in the center, done in either red or black respectively, and they each feature ornate gold ink all throughout. One is the Royal Navy with kind of a nautical ship's wheel there in the center. The second one features three different sort of crests on the club, and on the heart you have a really beautiful ornate design with an intertwined A and V for King Albert and Queen Victoria there in the center. So there are your four aces. The number cards are all beautifully custom as well. Really fantastic spade pips on these, and all of the pips, they all feature ornate gold ink details in there. You can see the lion in profile on the spades, for example. In some of the empty space on a lot of the number cards too, you'll get these little red flowers, which are kind of nice, extra little interesting element on the cards as well. All of the indices in the corner are done in gold ink, and the pips in the corner are more standard flat black pips. I really like this. I will say it gets a little bit busy as you get to some of the higher numbers to have all those filled in with the red, but I think it's still a really beautiful design. All four of the pips do feature their own custom design, all four of the suits. So there's the diamond, and with that little flower in the center. And then this time the red flowers in the middle have been swapped out for black. And then flipping over to the clubs, you have that sort of triple flower design there. And then into the hearts. And hearts, you once again have that A and V intertwined for Albert and Victoria. So there are the heart pips. All right, and last but not least, we come to my favorite element of any Kevin Cantrell deck, and that is his court cards. He does really beautiful illustrations of the characters on his courts, and these are no exception. You can see the outstanding line work that he does on these. It really is quite exceptional, and it's done really heavy use of gold metallic inks to form the designs, almost to the point that the red and the black down the center serve more as an accent than a primary color you'd usually expect. Now the characters on the courts all represent some of the royalty and prime ministers of the era. The kings and the queens represent the prominent monarch and their husband or wife who ruled with them, and then the jacks will all represent some of the prime ministers from their reign. So on the king and queen of spades over here, we have the current monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, there in the center on the queen of spades. Her husband, Prince Philip, makes an appearance on the king of spades, and Harold Macmillan, one of the former prime ministers, is on the jack of spades. I love the little details that go into this one. Things like the medal that you'll see around the neck of Prince Philip over here, or the beautifully drawn scepter in Queen Elizabeth's hand over there. I love all those little touches and really just beautifully detailed images all throughout. Now, and kind of continuing with the gold standard, you'll notice that all of the kings and jacks are in that suicide position with the sword positioned by their head. That's meant to be kind of a symbolic gesture representing the impending end of the gold standard. So because the gold standard isn't used anymore, the theme of the deck and its eventual demise is represented in the kings and jacks throughout. Looking at some of the other courts, turning to the diamonds, here are those, and these feature King George VI, as well as his wife, the Queen Mother, and Winston Churchill, perhaps the most famous of the prime ministers of England. At least here in the US, he's one of the most well-known. There's him. I love the cigar in his mouth on that one. Turning to the clubs, we have King George V, as well as Queen Mary, and Lloyd over there as the prime minister, like the little gavel in his hand. I really like this sword too on the King of Clubs, that kind of blunted look to the sword. And last but not least are the hearts, featuring Albert, Victoria, and Melbourne on the Jack of Hearts. So there are your three heart courts. So that is the deck. Now, as far as handling, these are on that premium crushed stock that Art of Play uses for a lot of their decks. It's a super thin stock and it handles absolutely beautifully. Fans just so smooth right out of the box. USPCC always does a great job with their decks and their handling, but that thin premium crushed stock really just takes it to another level. I will say they're maybe not the most durable of decks with that thinness, but the handling out of the box is just outstanding. That said, as far as uses of the deck, despite the handling, I would say, this is definitely one you could use for cardistry. It handles certainly well enough for that. Dan and Dave Buck over at Art of Play always make sure that that's the case. But really, this is above all a collector's deck in my mind. I think it's one where you're going to want to appreciate the artwork, appreciate that beautiful tuck case. That really is going to be where this finds its niche. Yeah, you could use it for gameplay. Yeah, you could use it for cardistry. You could probably even get away with using this for Magic, but collectors are really going to be where this is at. And I think that higher end price point, is a $15 deck at retail, really kind of puts that in its place as a collector's deck. So that's it. Fourth deck in the Standard Series, the Flag Edition. Hope you enjoyed. If you're interested, make sure to pick one up for yourself on Art of Play. I think it is absolutely worth having in every collection. Thanks a lot. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe for more deck reviews and unboxings. Let me know what else you want to see, and I'll see you for the next one.